Hello, and thank you for watching. Today we're joined by Jeff Harders. Um, Jeff is second in command flying the CE 700 for NetJets. And so, Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and your current role at NetJets.
Jeff Harders, live in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a first officer on the Citation and Longitude, which is a super mid-sized corporate jet for NetJets Aviation.
Perfect. And so, obviously, you are a pilot. And so, what does a typical day look like for you as you're making your trips?
So corporate aviation is it's very diverse. So no 2 days look alike. I will say, if I could just like make up a random day, it would be waking up 7, 8 o'clock at the hotel, maybe fly three legs, think New York to Boston, Boston to Miami, Miami to LA, and then into the hotel by about 6 p.m. So no 2 days are alike. We never go to the same places, but typically 8 to 10 hours of duty a day is pretty common.
Perfect. And so, obviously, there's a lot of different careers within aviation, but what first sparked your interest to become a pilot?
I was 4 years old. I saw a toy airplane at a Gordman's, and I was obsessed. I just couldn't read enough or watch enough content, and it's just been chasing all that knowledge ever since.
Yeah, and so kind of looking back, I know you've done a bunch of different jobs within aviation before you got to where you are now. But kind of looking back, what was maybe your first step towards entering the aviation industry?
So my first job in aviation was as a line service technician at an FBO, which is a fixed base operator. That's essentially like a gas station truck stop for airplanes, and that's fueling airplanes, towing airplanes. It's just a good entry level into the industry. You learn sort of all about the airlines, the corporate charter clients. You work with the military. It was just a good way to learn the industry and make connections in those early stages. So that was, yeah, my entrance into aviation.
Perfect. And so, in addition to being a line service technician, you were also a survey pilot in COSAD. Do you mind explaining kind of what this position is and what skills and knowledge you gained from that?
So the survey flying was agricultural aerial imagery. It was using a laser lidar to see crop stress and basically the amount of water in the fields. So I flew a Cessna 172, which is a single engine piston airplane all over the Midwest, imaging fields from about 10,000 feet to 14,000 feet. Um, that was my first flying job. I was so excited to have it. I was finally getting paid to fly airplanes. The airplane was built in like 1974, no autopilot, very rudimentary GPS, but I really learned. It was my first time, flying long distances, flying through maybe inclement weather, and really being the guy who was in charge and figuring it out. So that was a huge confidence booster in that early stage of my aviation career.
Yeah. And so, like we kind of said, you've done a bunch of different jobs, but it seemed like one of your first like bigger jobs was when you were working at Silverhawk Aviation.
Yep.
And so, as we kind of dive into that a little bit, it seems as though you progressed from King Air C90 second command to CE 525 pilot in command. And so, do you mind kind of walking us through your progression there and also maybe what responsibilities changed from second in command to pilot in command?
Absolutely. So once I finished surveying, that was, you're not flying passengers, you're flying a very small airplane, it's just you. Then my first professional job, full time, was flying the King Air C90 as a first officer, second command. Um, so now you're flying a more high performance airplane with passengers and more diverse weather. As a first officer, your duties are making sure the airplane's airworthy, checking the oil, making sure there's snacks on the airplane. It's more of a tactical view of the operation. As I progressed, I became a King Air PIC pilot in command, and then ultimately a CJ, which is a small light jet pilot in command. The roles shift when you become the pilot in command. You're thinking more strategic. You're doing the flight planning. you're doing the weight and balance, you're making sure the fuel meets the legal requirements, and you're just thinking more big picture. Both are rewarding in their own ways. Obviously, in aviation, the bigger airplanes you fly, the more responsibilities you have, the more money you make. So you just sort of chasing that ladder and climbing it slowly. But yeah,
Perfect. And so, kind of thinking about the different license and certifications that you need, you obviously need to build some like flight hours, right? And so, what were maybe some of the biggest challenges you faced while building those flight hours and experience early in your career?
I think the toughest thing for me was that first license, a private pilot's license, because when you get into aviation, even if you're like me and you're really into it and you're watching the documentaries, there's so much to learn. And that private pilot's license, the first one, is where you build all those fundamentals. And it's really challenging because you're taking in so much information that for a lot of us is very foreign to, it's not like driving a car, it's not like driving a boat. It's this whole other world that you have to learn. Um, so that was really challenging. Once you get past that, every subsequent rating becomes a little bit easier because you're just building on those fundamentals. That was probably my biggest challenge early on, was just getting past that barrier to entry and building a good set of fundamentals.
Absolutely. And kind of on the same lines of those license and certifications, what are maybe some of those license and certifications that are required to reach your current position, and how do you prepare for those?
So private pilot's license is the first one. And when you get any pilot's license, you'll have a certified flight instructor. They'll walk you through what needs to be done. There's obviously a lot of self-study at home. How well you do in this career and how quickly you go through it is how self-motivated you are. The more work you do on your own, the faster and the cheaper you'll typically progress through it. But after my private pilot's license was my instrument pilot's license. That is more flying with more precision, using radio navigation aids, GPS, and flying in the clouds when you can't see where you're going. After that is a commercial pilot's license, where you are sort of expected to demonstrate mastery level understanding of the airplane as well as handling and knowing more of the rules and regulations with the FAA and sort of how to operate in that environment. After your commercial pilot's license is your multi-engine pilot's license. That's learning how to fly airplanes with multiple engines. And then after that is your airline transport pilot's license, which is essentially the license to fly a turbine-powered transport category airplane. It's the pinnacle. It's the last license you get, essentially.
Good. And so, here at the VR, we talk a lot about different hard and soft skills that you might need. Hard being more technical, soft being more, interpersonal. And so,
Sure.
when you think about the hard and soft skills needed to be a pilot, what might some of those be?
I know. We'll see if I answer this correctly. I think maybe the single most important thing you can have, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's having integrity. Aviation, whether you're a line guy at that very early stage or whether you're the captain of a 747, owning your mistakes is important. Again, no matter what stage you're at, lives count on you. And this isn't a career that rewards lying to get ahead. If you break something, you have to own that. I've seen people who have made some pretty major mistakes own it and keep their jobs, and people who have made very minor ones who've tried to cover them up lose their jobs. So, not only in your personal life, but in aviation especially, just being accountable is very important. As far as maybe a softer skill, technical knowledge, I mean, you're not asked to be an aeronautical engineer or be a mechanic, but knowing how a hydraulic system works, how a basic engine works, those are skills that will help some of that early ground study be more easily digested.
Perfect. Sounds like you kind of have to have a full understanding of how the plane works in order to kind of
You do.
ensure your safety, even. So,
They'll expect you to know how it works. And maybe even when I first started, there was a lot more emphasis on rote memorization. They would ask you questions. Tell me what's on the accessory drive of this engine. You have to list off everything that's on it. for the better, the FAA is moving away from that rote memorization and going to a more scenario-based system where they say, "Hey, if you had a an alternator fail, what would you expect to have happen?" And it's more realistic, and I think it offers better training. So yeah, that's we're kind of trending in that direction.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like the best pilots are built from the experience that they have. So,
Absolutely.
well, as far as some of the misconceptions, I know you've been a pilot for a long time now, and so you've done
Yeah,
many different
it's years
jobs.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And so, what are maybe some misconceptions that are out there about being a pilot?
When I got into aviation, saying I wanted to be a pilot, there was no pilots in my family. I grew up on a farm. That was like saying you wanted to be a rock star. Like you don't know anyone who's a rock star, so it's intimidating to get into. I would say it's a challenging career to get into. It's financially a costly career to get into, but it's also a realistic career for someone who's determined to achieve. That's maybe the biggest one is that it's attainable. The second one, and it's a little bit corny, but I assumed you had to be an Albert Einstein with math, and that's just not the case. It's very basic math. Now it's good to understand that we're not doing algebra or geometry up there. It's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's about the height of the math we're required to do.
It's good to know. And another thing that I think is brought up quite a bit is the fact that, I think a lot of my students that begin thinking about being a pilot, they think about, American Airlines or United, like some of these big companies.
Absolutely.
So maybe explain some of the differences between corporate aviation and commercial airline flying.
I have a lot of friends who are 121 legacy commercial airline pilots. The big difference is those guys typically have to live in base, so they have to live in Chicago or Denver. Living in a place like Omaha can be more challenging. Their life is more structured, so they fly more that hub and spoke. They'll fly Chicago to Dallas, Dallas to Chicago, Chicago to Omaha, overnight in Omaha, and then back to Chicago. My job, I never know where I'm going. It's a bit more chaotic. I like that excitement. It's what got me into aviation is the adventure. For some people, it's terrible. They hate not knowing where they're going to spend the night. We In corporate aviation, we have support behind us. We have dispatchers, we have a meteorology department, but it's definitely two pilots out there making it work. We're throwing bags, we're ordering the fuel, we're figuring all that out. Where the commercial airlines, they have baggage handlers, they have gate agents. It's a lot more of a team oriented sport. Where for us, we have a lot more passenger interaction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And as we kind of move on here, some of these are going to be more so suited for the high school student that's interested in kind of getting their feet wet. So, as far as if a high school student is interested in aviation, what would you recommend they start doing now to prepare?
Something that is really cool that we have now that I didn't even have growing up is the amount of content on YouTube. It really pulls the behind the scenes content out there. I mean, when I was coming up in aviation, there were books, and that was about it. Now there's aviation YouTubers who show corporate aviation, ag aviation, the cargo flying, the 121 passenger carriers, and charter. And you can really see what each of those jobs really looks like in a day to day basis and see all the other opportunities that are out there. And I think that's a cool resource to just get your feet wet and figure out what this industry is.
Yeah, are there any like aviation programs, schools, scholarships, or any things like that you would recommend?
I know there are. I know there's some schools in Omaha that have aviation programs. The EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, has scholarships. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot about that stuff, but I know there are definitely programs that help get people into aviation.
Perfect. All right, I got two more questions for you. This one might be one of the more important ones. So, if you could go back in time and give advice to yourself when you were in high school, what would it be?
It would be that it's attainable. It's a career you can get, and then just I don't know. I was so intimidated to get into it and so afraid of failure that it maybe took me a bit longer than it should have. But just obviously, you don't want to fail check rides, but just know that people know that when you're a early level pilot, you don't know everything, and that's okay. But just to always be trying to better yourself and learn more, but not to be afraid of making mistakes, I think is important. And just to be okay with the knowledge level you're at. That maybe sounds cliche. People who want to be pilots, everyone wants to be Chuck Yeager or the Red Baron. They all want to be the Top Gun. They want it to come easily and just succeed at it. And I think everyone hits plateaus where maybe you struggle and it's like, this is supposed to be, I was supposed to be the best at this. And just to be okay with where you're at, if that rambling makes sense at all.
Yeah, totally. I think that's good advice for life in general too. So, all right, last question for you. So, if any students have been watching this and they find aviation interesting, but maybe being a pilot is just maybe not in the cards for them right now.
Sure.
What are some career opportunities in aviation besides becoming a pilot?
So aviation offers a lot of well-paying, I think, desirable jobs besides being the pilot. Air traffic controller is a cool job. I mean, you're working alongside the pilots. If you want to move, that's a cool job. I mean, there's air traffic controllers all over the United States, and it's financially rewarding. And that's a job where you don't need a college degree. You just need to apply with the FAA and be accepted into their program in Oklahoma City. Another career path would be to be an A&P or an aircraft mechanic. A&P stands for Aircraft and Power Plant. That's a very well-paying job. Duncan Aviation in Lincoln will hire people, and if they show the right aptitude, will train them to be a mechanic. And that is a good job to keep your finger on the pulse of the industry.
Perfect.
There's also management. There's dispatch. Our company has dispatchers who plan our flights for us. We have meteorology departments, and then there's a regulatory side with the FAA. That's why I recommend the YouTube and the job as the line guy as people's entry into the industry, because they can see all those other jobs, and if they want to specialize, they can work towards that, and they'll have the connections to do that.
Great. And just a little fun shout out for the VR. If you're interested in any of those positions, contact me because I can help you check them out. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff, for your time. And that's about all I got for you.
Thank you for having me.